When women reach a career crossroads, they often assume the answer must be somewhere out in front of them, in the next opportunity, the next role, the next plan. And sometimes the future does hold important answers, but very often, part of the clarity a woman needs is not only ahead of her, part of it is behind her. Not behind her in the sense of going backwards, but behind her in the sense of clues, patterns, moments, earliest experiences that revealed something true about who she has always been. And that matters because women at a career crossroads feel pressure to figure out who they are now as if they're starting from nothing. But what if some of the most important clues have already appeared? What if your life has already been showing you something? Not in one perfect moment, not in one neat answer, but in the moments when you felt most alive, most engaged, and most naturally yourself. That is what I want to talk about today because I think many women overlook the wisdom hidden in their early life. They dismiss it as old history, childhood memories, former interests, past versions of themselves that no longer seem relevant. But sometimes those early moments are not random at all. Sometimes they're clues, clues about what has consistently energized you, what has consistently mattered to you, and what felt natural, what has kept you trying to express itself through different seasons of life. She stops trying so hard to invent her future from nothing, and she starts recognizing the truth that has been with her much longer than she realized. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and listening into the podcast. I really appreciate you. I say it over and over, and I always will because I can't say it enough because I feel it all the time. I really appreciate you for listening in and helping us get ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes. So thank you so much for that. Go ahead and share the episode with a friend, subscribe to the podcast, and help us keep it going. Okay, so now over the last several episodes, we've been moving deeper into the identity side of a career crossroads. We talked about the questioning, why it is not random, why achievement does not always bring clarity, why strategy alone often fails. We talked about why the inner signs matter. And in the last episode, we talked about why a career crossroads is often less about reinventing yourself and more about reconnecting with who you really are. Because once a woman realizes she is being invited back to herself, now the next question is often this: well, how do I find my way back? How do I recognize what is true when I have spent so much time focused on roles, responsibilities, and external measures of success? And one answer is this: you begin paying closer attention to the clues already present in your own story. And that's what we're going to be exploring today. It's all about why earlier life matters more than many women think. And I think many women underestimate the value of their earlier life because they assume the past is the past. Childhood was childhood. Earlier seasons were earlier seasons. And now life is more serious, more complex, more demanding. So they assume the answers must be found only in adult logic, adult responsibilities, and adult strategy. But the deeper self does not usually begin in adulthood. It reveals itself much earlier than that, often long before there was a resume, long before there was a title, long before there were expectations about what looked good on paper. That is why earlier life matters, because earlier life contains moments where your truest self expressed itself more naturally with less interference. Not perfectly, but honestly. And those moments matter because They can reveal enduring truths. What drew you, what absorbed you, what felt meaningful, what came naturally. That's valuable information. Not because the past tells you exactly what job or what career path to take now, but it can show you something deeper than titles. It can show you the shape of your truth. Now, these are not cute memories. They are identity clues. So when I talk about looking back at earlier life, I'm not talking about nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. I'm talking about clues, identity clues, moments that reveal something about how you naturally show up when you are most yourself, moments that reveal what lights you up, what feels instinctive, what kind of energy comes forward most naturally to you. Because when women here look back, they sometimes think it sounds sentimental or vague. But I don't think this work is vague at all. I think it's investigative. You're not just reminiscing, you're paying attention. You are asking, what keeps repeating? What was already there? What came naturally? And what mattered before life became so layered with pressure and performance? So, why these clues often get buried? The reason so many women do not naturally trust these earlier clues is because adulthood teaches them to value other things more. Things like productivity, practicality, credentials, prestige, security, external success. And again, none of these things are meaningless, but they can become so dominant that early identity signals start to feel irrelevant. A woman may think, that was just something I loved as a child. Oh, that was just a phase. Or that was before real life kicked in. Or that's not practical. But very often, the deeper pattern did not disappear. It simply got translated, buried, or crowded out. The form may have changed, the responsibility may have changed, the expression may have changed, but the underlying thread is still there. That's why looking back matters, because a woman may realize that what she thought she had outgrown was actually something central she had stopped listening to. So, what kinds of earlier clues matter most? What kinds of earlier moments are worth paying attention to? Usually, not just any memory, usually the ones that carry aliveness, the moments when you felt especially engaged, especially natural, energized, clear. Maybe you were organizing something, teaching something, making something, or leading something, explaining something, imagining something. What matters is not only what you were doing, it's also how you were being. What quality was present in you? What kind of energy showed up? What part of you came most naturally? That's often where the clue lives. Because the clue is not always the literal activity. Sometimes the clue is the deeper pattern underneath it. For example, a woman loved playing school as a child. The clue may not simply be become a teacher. The clue may be that she has long had a natural desire to explain, to guide, to facilitate growth, and help people understand things. So that's deeper. That travels and that can show up in many forms. What women often rediscover when they look back. When women begin looking back honestly, they often rediscover some very important things. They rediscover what energized them before achievement became the main measure. They rediscover forms of joy that were not performative. They rediscover values that deeply felt natural long before they had language for them. And they rediscover strengths that were visible early on. And perhaps most importantly, they rediscover continuity. They begin to see that who they are now is not disconnected from who they've always been. But looking back can reveal that you're not as lost as you thought. There may also be a thread that has been there all along. So now I want to say why this matters more than resume logic. This kind of reflection matters because resume logic is limited. A resume shows roles, titles, achievements, and timelines. It shows what you have done. It may show what you are good at, but it does not always show what has felt most deeply true. And at a career crossroads, those deeper truths matter. Because if a woman looks at her resume to figure out what comes next, she may stay trapped in the logic of what has already been rewarded. Earlier clues can disrupt that. They can reveal a deeper pattern that is not fully captured by formal roles, a pattern of contribution, energy, natural ability. And once that becomes visible, a woman often has a stronger basis for discernment than her resume could ever provide. So now let's talk about how your earlier life may show you what you return to. And one of the most powerful things to notice is this: what you have returned to again and again, even if it takes different forms. Maybe you've always returned to teaching, even if your title was not teacher, for example. Or maybe you always return to guiding, even if your job description changed. Maybe you've always returned to creating, encouraging, leading, writing, serving, building, solving, mentoring, or bringing clarity. That matters because repeated return is a clue. When something keeps resurfacing across seasons, there's usually a reason. I mean, life changes, circumstances change, roles change, but some deeper pattern keeps finding expression. When a woman begins to notice what she has repeatedly returned to, she often sees that her story has more coherence than she realized. There's often a deeper internal logic, a deeper design, a deeper kind of faithfulness of what is true in her. All right, so now let's talk about how earlier clues can help you distinguish between conditioning and truth. At a career crossroads, many women are trying to sort out what in their life reflects their deepest truth and what reflects conditioning. What did I choose because it was truly mine? Or what did I choose because it was expected, admired, rewarded, or sensible? That can be hard to untangle in the present because the present is so full of pressure and noise and consequence. But earlier clues can sometimes help because earlier life often reveals preferences, instincts, energies, and forms of aliveness that emerge before certain external scripts become so dominant. And that can help a woman identify what feels deeply native to her versus what may have been layered on later. It can help her see this part of me is old. This part of me is real. This part of me has been consistent. This part of me feels like home. So now here's what looking back does not mean. So I want to say what it does not mean. It does not mean the answer is to go recreate your childhood literally. No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean every interest becomes a career. And it does not mean the form of your earlier life should determine the exact form of your next chapter. It doesn't mean that. The point is not to imitate the past. The point is to interpret it, to ask what it reveals, to ask what it points to ask what quality, value, energy, strength, or desire for contribution was visibly there. Because once you understand the deeper meaning of the clue, you can express it in a mature, current form. So you're not going backward, you're drawing wisdom forward. All right, so here's what this process gives you. When a woman begins seeing these earlier identity clues more clearly, she often gains something incredibly valuable at a career crossroads. She gains self trust because now she's no longer trying to make decisions from panic or emptiness. She's building from evidence, internal evidence, story evidence, pattern evidence, life evidence. And she can say, oh, this has been true in me. She can say that this has consistently mattered for me. She can say this kind of energy has followed me, or this kind of contribution keeps returning. Now that creates a different kind of clarity, a quieter clarity, but often a stronger one because it's based on a deeper continuity with self. And from there, strategy becomes more grounded. All right, so now before we close, I want to leave you with a few questions. What earlier moments in your life made you feel most alive or most fully yourself? What have you returned to again and again, even in different forms? And what part of your story have you dismissed as irrelevant that may actually be carrying an important clue? And what would change if you began treating your own life not just as history, but as evidence? Sometimes the next chapter becomes clearer when you stop looking only for new answers and start recognizing older truths. So, in our next episode, we're going to keep building on this because once you begin noticing the clues in your story, the next question becomes, how do I separate what is deeply true in me from what has simply been rewarded in me? In the next episode, we're going to talk about the differences between natural abilities, learned competence, and externally rewarded success, and why that distinction matters so much at a career crossroads. So, if you're at a career crossroads, I want to leave you with this. Your earlier life may contain more wisdom than you think, not because the past tells you exactly what to do, but because it may reveal what has been true in you for a very long time. And the truth is worth paying attention to. All right. Thank you for listening. And if this conversation resonated with you, be sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss the next episode in this series. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin.